Recording is on.
Okay, Jivi. It's okay.
So you can go.
Yeah.
So we can start at any time?
Yes, please, Sasha, you can start.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome today to TV in Pinduka. My name is Sasha Kayinde. I'm here with some esteemed guests. Our topic today is we're going to speak about Rwanda and its viability as a country. As we all know, a viable country is one that's able to function and develop adequately, politically, economically, culturally, and peaceful. So this afternoon, me and our guests are going to have dig deep into that and how it is affecting Rwandans today. In our guests, we have Justin Bahunga. He is a former Rwandan journalist and diplomat in many African countries and has also participated in many missions in Western countries. We also have Mr. Celestin Sengiyumva. He's a former Rwandan journalist. He was an interpreter for President Habyarimana and diplomat in Addis Abed. Mr. Okay, Addis Ababa. I thought like, oh, okay. So the in Ethiopia, Mr. Sengiyumva has written more than 4 books on the topic of the Greater African region. So welcome, Mr. Sengiyumva.
Thank you.
Then we also have Dr. Pierre Celestin Bakunda Ichicharo. Sorry if I'm saying your Rwandan names horribly.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
He's a PhD holder and professor at various colleges and universities in Africa, Asia, and Europe. He is also a writer. All three are current experts on the Great Lakes region in many fields. And this afternoon, we're going to speak on our country, Rwanda, and how it is doing in all those fields. So we will start, if possible, with Mr. Justin Bahunga, who will speak to us about the political implications of Rwanda as a viable country, specifically in terms of the refugees throughout the world and how that has impacted modern Rwanda. And of course, something we've all come accustomed to, the lack of democracy and basic human rights. So Mr. Bahunga, yeah, the floor is yours.
Give me a second, Sarah. So gentlemen, welcome to our English desk program at Eltavayi in Pinduka. And I think I have to also emphasize that this show is called Rwanda, a viable, can Rwanda be a viable country for all its citizens? I just want to point out that, but other than that, Mr. Justin Bahunga, go ahead and just tie that with your explanations. Am I clear enough on that?
Very clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sasa, and thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. As you said, my name is Justin Bahunga. I live in the UK. And I have to thank you for inviting me to this debate on the viability of Rwanda in terms of responding to the problem of refugees and to democracy. And indeed, I think the two are interconnected, democracy and refugees, because refugees is a symptom of a system. And lack of democracy is a push factor for people to flee their countries. And that's the case of Rwanda. I'm not sure if you're aware that we have now the estimate of about more than 500,000 refugees across the world, which is much higher than what we had in 1990 when the RPF attacked Rwanda. I will just mention for that sake because the springboard was in Uganda. The figures we had, because I so happened to be in Uganda at the time, the official figures we had from United Nations High Commission for Refugees was 82,600. What I have learned from the figures in Ugandan government is that we have now 130,000 refugees, Hutu refugees. We had Tutsi refugees, now we have 130 Hutu refugees in Uganda. And the tragedy of Rwanda is that the Hutu refugees are living now in what is to be the refugee camp of former Tutsi refugees.
Oh, wow.
So that's the tragedy of Rwanda. And of course, as I said, why are Rwandans fleeing their country? Of course, it is lack of democracy, violation of human rights. And I will just say a little bit about the summary of what the United States the State Department makes reports every year on each country. And the US is the key ally of Rwanda. So I quote the US State Department because I believe it would be an honest broker or honest assessment of Rwanda given the relationship between the two countries. And what speaks of Rwanda this is a report for 2022, which came out in March this year, is that about extrajudicial killings, life-threatening prison conditions, transnational repression, imprisonment of journalists, and so on and so on. And therefore, it is quite understandable that people would prefer those that country. And the question is, when it's viable, is can Rwanda deliver on refugees? Meaning delivering means, can it create the conditions for the Rwandans who are in exile to go back home? And my answer is no. Why? One, of course, as I said, the conditions for people to stay in Rwanda are minimum. You know how many people are in prison now or those who are outside, and the set of treatment that they give to people who try to be critical of government, that don't really create the conditions for the refugee to go back home. And it's so interesting that those who are refugees now in Rwanda were invited in 1963 by the First Republic by Gregory Kayibanda as a president to return home, and they said no. Well, I suspect they were saying the conditions are not ripe for us to come back to Rwanda. In 1990, July 1990, there was an agreement signed between Rwanda, Uganda, the UNHCR for the peaceful return of refugees from Uganda. And indeed, on the agreement was signed in July 1990, and there are three options which were given to refugees. One was those who want to stay in Uganda. Two, those who want to return to Rwanda. And the three, those who want resettlement. And it was agreed that there would be a delegation of refugees to Rwanda to visit the country and then come back and inform their fellow refugees to allow them to make what we call an informed decision between the three alternatives. The 1st of October 1990, that's when the delegation was supposed to go to Rwanda. We know the delegation which came. They came with the arms, and that's it. That was the response. That's what the delegation we got. Instead of and again, I think they were saying that the conditions in Rwanda, they could not trust the Rwandan government that would receive them peacefully. So, as I say, in Rwanda now, as we know, in the report of Freedom House for 2022, Rwanda, in terms of political and civil rights, the score is 23%. And I've told you the reports of Human Rights Watch. I quoted the United States of America, which is actually clear, like Rwanda, not to tell any lies or to undermine Rwanda. So the conditions are not there for them, for Rwandan refugees to return home. That's why I'm saying Rwanda cannot deliver on return refugees because of those reasons, because the conditions are not ripe, are not conducive, are not encouraging for refugees to come back home. And that's one. And secondly is the campaign of the Rwandan government. So in the mind of the Rwandan government, those who have not come back home are either they fear justice for having committed genocide, or they're extremists who don't want to be ruled by a government which is led by Tutsi. For those, and thirdly is of course lack of.
Mr. Justin Bahunga.
Yes, please.
You just mentioned they are feared of having committed genocide. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what
maybe they are feared of being accused of genocide.
I think that's what he was saying. Yeah.
That actually, I'm saying that actually the propaganda of the government is that those. I'm saying the government has not had the political will for people to come, and one of the evidence is that the government says that's why actually it is negotiated the cessation clause with the National High Commission for Refugees, saying there is no reason for any Rwandan to be a refugee. And those, meaning actually implying and saying those who don't want to come back is because they are fear they are running away from justice, because either they committed the crimes or planned whatever. But secondly, saying if not that, is because they're extremists who don't want to be ruled by government which is led by Tutsi. Am I clear there? I think that's the point I want to make. That actually lack of political will.
And Mr. Bahunga, you're so right about that point. I just want to add, as a child who left Rwanda at 1 year old, even our age group isn't immune to this. When I am speaking with members of the Rwandan government, they will unashamedly call me either an Interahamwe or an extremist. And when I think about it, how can a 1 year old child who was in Rwanda, that's the only context, know that? But you're right that is a big tool they use to silence other Rwandans. So please continue.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kainde. Exactly, because now, how can you be encouraged, you Kainde, to return home when you are called an Interahamwe with what you are saying? That's why I'm saying that the language of the government does not help convince people who don't toe the government line to return home.
Now, Mr. Bahunga, Mr. Justin Bahunga, if I understand it correctly, for you, from that perspective of having so many refugees outside of the country, so you are trying to tell us that Rwanda cannot be a viable state nation for all its citizens. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, viability meaning actually for me, I interpret that viability in terms of refugees, I mean, it cannot deliver on the issue of having returnees come back home.
Okay, now if we go by definition, say, let's say a viable country is one that is able at least to function or to develop adequately, politically, economically, culturally, and peacefully. Is that a fair definition?
Yeah, I mean, exactly, it is. Now,
maybe we're gonna come back to that that topic. let's go to Mr. Celestin Nsengiyumva. Celestin Nsengiyumva, you are an expert about the African Great Lake region, and you know that Rwanda lacks of natural resources. And what do you take about associating that to a viable nation? You have the floor.
Thank you, Jean-Jacques. Thank you. Rwanda actually has resources. What we don't have is the political will of the government to get these resources developed to benefit all its citizens. So Rwanda, yes, it is a small country, not a large country, but Rwanda is not the only country which is landlocked, Jean-Jacques. Switzerland is a landlocked country, also a mountainous country. Luxembourg is also a landlocked country. Liechtenstein is also another country which is landlocked in the European Alps, in the mountains. And I can also add the Vatican City state. It is also a state which is landlocked in Rome, Italy. So being landlocked is really not a very serious handicap as long as the governance or the government of that landlocked country is prepared to organize a mutually beneficial cooperation with its neighbors. So the argument that Rwanda is not viable because it is landlocked is not. It is a nonsensical argument. Rwanda can develop even as a landlocked country, but there are conditions. The conditions are internal peace in the country. That is a country which takes all its citizens on equal footing and give them equal opportunities, and then cooperation and collaboration among between the landlocked countries and their neighbors. We have very rich neighbors. We can contribute manpower. We have been actually contributing to manpower, but the government which you have in Rwanda now has different priorities. For Rwanda to develop and be a viable country for all its citizens, we need to realign government priorities. For example, does Rwanda need an over-powerful army which can attack its Western neighbor for 25 years?
Mr. Nsengiyumva, that on that one, we maybe
I had a question for that too.
You will move forward to that. Probably, if you don't mind, it looks like Sarah Kayinde is just ready to go to to Dr. Pierre Celestin Bakunda Ichicaro, because the people say Rwanda can or cannot be a viable nation if it doesn't consider the social and peaceful aspect. And it sounds like people think Rwanda, it's just run like an apartheid system. So, Sarah, that's you want to ask? Go ahead.
Okay. JJ, if it's okay, I just had a follow-up question for Mr. Nsengiyumva, a quick one, and then I'll jump on to.
Go ahead.
Mr. Nsengiyumva, when I speak to a lot of people who don't know Rwanda, I use the term a mercenary state because one of the largest things in Rwanda that is part of the system is its army. And like you just spoke about changing our priorities. If you could speak about that in a quick note, how was in comparison?
Sarah,
Yeah?
that was for, I believe it was to be asked to.
The second part. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
second part. I think so.
Okay. All right.
Because
Then.
we
Sorry
don't
about
need
that.
to jump the guns. However, the flow is good.
Okay. So then we'll just move on then to Dr. I'll come back to that question. Dr. Bakunda Ichicaro, sorry. Ndi
That's
Munyarwanda,
the
who
name.
can speak
Bakunda
Kinyarwanda.
Ikicharo. Bakunda Ikicharo. Huh?
Okay.
We're gonna send you back to Rwanda to learn the Kinyarwanda language, mademoiselle.
Yes. Soon,
Jean-Jacques,
soon.
to say that name, you need to say Bakundi Kicharo. Bakundi Kicharo. Bakundi Kicharo.
Oh,
Not
okay.
chop it into different pieces.
It's one word.
It is one word. Bakundi Kicharo.
Ah,
Okay,
I
we
see.
are learning, and he's here to give us the right meanings and pronunciation.
Okay, thank you. So on our topic on social and peaceful coexistence and integration, when I'm speaking to a lot of people, young people in Rwanda, they often do not believe that there is any discrimination or any form of an apartheid style system. And it reminds me of how one of the RPF members, Dr. Kabarebe, or Mr. Kabarebe, spoke about how they mind wash the youth. And so when I see the people who live in that system, they cannot even acknowledge that system exists. Bakundi Charo, could you explain to us, is Rwanda
sorry, Mr. Justin Bahunga. Mr. Justin Bahunga?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
From time to time, you can maybe put you on mute, so you don't
Okay,
hear.
no worries, no worries.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so the question is, do you believe Rwanda has created some sort of apartheid system? Is it too exaggeration to use that word? And with a system like that, how do people survive in moments of tensions when there is no unity or in the country? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kayinde, Sarah. I think we can't compare apartheid to RPF in Rwanda. We can't, because two systems which are really opposed, but which are dealing with political segregation. This means that apartheid was a system which was created to, make Africans, Black, Métis, and Indians, to enslave them, to somewhat let them at a point they could not develop. That's why it is called, it was called separate development. Separate development meant that white people could enjoy everything from South Africa, whereas others could not. And this is something that we can qualify as a segregation based on races, because we see whites were against other races. Blacks, Indians, and Métis.
I just do want to add a quick question for you. With the context of Rwanda's historic feudal society, when we speak to outside Rwandans, they all see us the same. We're all Africans. We're all from the East African. But in the context of Rwanda's history, with the class differences, can we claim that there is any way of social segregation happening? Go ahead.
Oh yes, there is a social segregation, but this kind of segregation cannot be compared to what we have described in South Africa. Why? Because in Rwanda, we don't have races. We have groups of, individuals. We have group of Batutsi, we have a groups of Bahutu, we have groups of Batwa. Within these groups, they have other subgroups, which are, for instance, in case of Batutsi, they have Banyiginya, they have Batsobe, they have Bega, and others. In Hutu,
Mr. Celestin Bakunda Ichicharo, I think maybe I'm going to add something here. We are trying to feel like a comparison, not to give like equal meanings, which means when we read in a newspaper, it looks like we see almost like all the generals, maybe up to 100 generals, but it's just a percentage. Let's say if there are 40 generals, you will see maybe 1 or 1.5 of Hutu, or maybe 0.3. So that doesn't look like apartheid.
I don't.
No.
Can I add one more thing?
I'm saying, I'm developing my idea, saying that what they're doing in Kigali right now is worse than what white people were doing in South Africa. Why?
Okay, I understand.
Because white against other races is something that one can, understand. But even though it is not be understandable, because human beings are human beings. But in Rwanda, we have same groups. I mean, ethnicity exists, but within the ethnicity, we have these subgroups which combine together form a kind of apartheid, which is stronger than the one in South Africa, because they are against people of the same skins. See what I mean? There are people who are the same as Africans, but they are divided because of this kind of whatever intentions they have to divide and rule. To rule people who should be united and work together for the common goal, which is to develop Rwanda as a nation. But they are being excluded, because of their ethnicity, which is not the same in South Africa. South Africa was, a kind of segregation, racial segregation. But in Rwanda, it's ethnical segregation.
Now,
Right?
Mr. Bakunda Ichicharo, Dr. Bakunda Ichicharo. Now, if let's say someone will ask you, is that or does it look like a viable country or non-viable country? What would you suggest as an answer to that?
It is not a viable country. Why? When you talk about a viable country, it's a country which is sustainable in all domains. That means they have a lasting peace in that country. People can feel free. But today, what we see in Rwanda is that there are people who are being, who are disappearing. There are people who are being killed. There are people who are being put in jail, and others who are fleeing if they can. So this is to say that viability of a country means people feel together without any segregation, and they feel, like complementary. Now, you know what I mean? If you fear, a neighbor, if you can't sleep because they have put something, if they have put fear in your family, your wife can spy you, your kid can spy you.
Yeah,
you see what I mean?
Dr. Bakunda Ichicharo, it sounds like Mr. Justin Bahunga has a question to ask you. Is that right, Mr. or an intervention? Mr. Bahunga, are you there? Can you hear me? Or you are on mute?
It is not a question. I just want to compliment him. It is not a question.
Please
No.
do so. Yeah, we are in a debate, so you feel free to jump in and interact.
Yes, it was not. It's not actually. It is not just to compliment. Some compliment, but it's not a question. No.
Okay, go ahead if you wish to
Yeah,
comment.
actually, yeah. I want just to say, in terms of exclusion, just to mention, there was a study done by Universal College of Los Angeles, and on a root of cause of conflict and the link between violence and ethnic exclusion. And they carried a study on 155 countries from the period of 1945 to 2005, and it was carried out with the involvement of around 100 country experts around universities around the world, and it found that Rwanda and Syria and Sudan, before it was split, was the most exclusionary countries in their study. And of course, as you know, Syria, that was 2005. And since then, we can see what happened to Syria, also happened to Sudan. But the point I want to make and the complement what Makundi Chicha was saying is that indeed Rwanda, as I say, among the 155 countries, it was found to be among the most exclusionary in their study. And of course, the implication is we are doing a country which doesn't have, we don't know what's going to happen. But of the three countries, the two have already had a problem. Sudan has split into two. We know how many Syria. That's the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So,
Dr. Nsengiyumva.
yes, thank you. And probably it looks like, because we have a couple, a few topics to cover, or a few topics to cover. And now, Mr. Bahunga, I think you could carry on.
I think Celestine just wanted to say something.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to add that Rwanda is a viable country on the condition that the obstacles which are impeding Rwanda's development are removed. These obstacles are, among others, the policy of exclusion, the fact that our government is out to protect the interest of the minority, and ignoring totally the interest of the large majority who are languishing in poverty. And as I was saying in my first intervention, we also need to realign our priorities. We need, for example, to promote development of human resources instead of developing our army. Do we need an army which can frighten every neighbor instead of an army that or police?
Celeste Nsengiyumva. Yeah, Celeste Nsengiyumva. That was on the menu as well, because in a moment I'm gonna just give the microphone to Mr. Justin Bahunga, because it looks like a viable state must fulfill what we call democratic principles. Mr. Bahunga,
you're absolutely right. We are supposed to write. Actually, what I'm saying is viability means actually can it deliver effective
Mr. Bahunga,
yes.
Tell us democracy in Rwanda, how it's related to a viable state at the moment.
No, it's again, I think viable. I mean, for me, the definition of viability or viable is, can a government effectively deliver on democracy? Can it deliver on turn of refugees? Can it deliver on, I want to call actually what Makundi Chicha was saying, can it deliver on the issue of inclusivity? That's, for me, that's how I define viability of a system. Can it on 1, 2, 3, 4? That I was saying when about the refugees, I said, can it effectively deliver on the refugees? And deliver means, can it encourage, can it end the problem of refugees? Now, when it comes to the apartheid and so on, the actual exclusion, I was saying, can it deliver on the issue of inclusivity? Because what we are saying now is exclusion. When
Okay,
it comes to democracy now,
Mr. Bahunga, let me really clarify this question. Now, we know democracy means the power to people. We know democracy means the three power of the government are equal and are independent. I mean judiciary, I mean executive, I mean legislative. So that's where I'm heading. Do we have that in Rwanda? Do we see that can happen in Rwanda? What's your opinion?
Of course, no. I mean, what is happening? It is not there, and it's not likely to happen soon. Again, I'm saying it's very difficult it is not there, and I don't see it happening soon. Why? That's what I want to say. Why I don't see it happening? Why again cannot deliver on democracy? Is that its own political philosophy is based on violence, on a culture of violence, which actually is quite contrary the whole idea of democracy. One, again, it cannot change those issues to democracy, to have independence of the judiciary, executive. It can, because as we see now, all the power is concentrated in the hand of the executive. The executive is not else than the president.
It's 12 o'clock.
So that's clearly, it is very clear that there is no separation of powers in Rwanda. Judicially, it works the hands of the president's will. And I give an example, is that when Ingabire went to Rwanda in January 2010, President Kagame gave an interview to a Ugandan newspaper called Monitor, and they said, this woman will go where she belongs, meaning in prison. Soon she was arrested. That's one key. And so many times, so many times again, put on forward, and then the judiciary, but does follow the instructions of the head of executive, which is the president. So there is no independence of the judiciary. The parliament is a rubber stamp for the decision of the executive. Again, the executive, which is headed by the president himself, who has all the powers. When you come to that's the executive, the judiciary, the parliament. So it is not there. And then what I was saying again, it was saying that it's not likely to happen, they cannot deliver, is that the whole system is based on violence. Why? Because it knows very well that democratic system of government cannot serve its purpose. So if you told me then that is delivering on democracy, I said definitely no. And that was from the very beginning. That's why people are fleeing the country, because they are denied their political and civil rights. Thank you.
Can I add something?
JJ? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I add? I have got a kind of suggestion here. Saying that one man, one person above other people. That means Rwanda is somewhat led by a person who is the master of everything, and what he says, nobody can say no. If we say no, so your place is either in jail or you can be killed, something like that. So we can even name it like a dictatorship that is somewhat led by a man, a strong man. However, Rwanda is put President Obama in Accra in 2010. He said Africa does not need strong men, but strong institutions. So now, this man is the one who imposed his will, is the one who can decide everything. we don't have in Rwanda democracy. Democracy is somewhat something which is not, it does not exist at all. How can a president say, I will be elected up to 2034? Is it a democracy? No. So now, if somebody is, above all people or above all, the three powers, legislative, judiciary, and parliamentary, whatever, So if he's the one to manage all powers, that means the country is in total chaos. The country can't, evolve. The country can't develop. So there's no way to compare Rwanda to South Africa, even though Botha and whatever president were doing the same, but this one introduced other systems that are somewhat linking everyone, to his will. He can't allow anyone to contradict him. He can't allow anyone to give idea or advice to him. And he's the one to reign like an emperor.
I was just going to say, in Kinyarwanda, I think they call him Umwami.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Now,
I just had a question, JJ. If you can give me a quick minute, it's for whichever panelist can chime in. Mr. Nsengiyumva mentioned something about investing in the human resources versus creating this exclusion of the human resources. Democracy, I believe in Latin, means something, rule of the masses, or the idea of masses. But in Kinyarwanda history and Kinyarwanda politics, they call democracy the rule of the mob, because historically the majority have been seen either as the Hutus mixed with Twas. And so I've noticed in Rwandan politics, democracy is not spoken of as a positive, it's spoken of as a negative, almost like anarchy, because if you gave the people as a mass ability to choose, do they have the ability to choose rights? But what I really wanted to ask is this investing in human resources versus exclusion. Can we tie it to where Rwanda is economically? Can you exclude that many people from your economy and still expect it to grow? Thank you.
I believe that question is to me.
Anyone in the panel, but you
Okay,
as well, yeah.
I think there's democracy. I'll answer on democracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Mr. Nsengiyumva, I also wanted to hear what you say to my question. Yeah. So
You are wondering whether democracy is possible when it is people vote according to their ethnic groups. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I just meant to say that in Rwandan politics, democracy isn't spoken of positively. It's seen as negatively because it's about numbers. And in Rwandan culture and politics, this conversation about numbers always comes to Tutsis are minority and Hutus are majority. And so for many people, when you tell them about democracy, they just hear numbers. And so for them, that has no meaning.
So it's, in other words, you are trying to say Hutu are almost estimated at 84%, and Tutsi being 14%, Twa being 1%. So it's, in other words, if there is an election, Hutu are more likely to win. That's what you mean, I guess.
That is what is said.
Okay, and, I can answer that question. I think the key issue is that the politicians, or I mean a very backward political system thinking, because normally the democracy is about a project, a policy. It's about not about the ethnic groups, but about the policies which different politicians will be put forward, and the people choose between those programs. So to say if there is a project, a political program, And then so happened because the Hutu are many, many Hutu vote for it. Probably they can pass, but they not pass it because the number of the Hutus, but because the policy was voted by a big number. So the problem they're thinking that if you put elections, then automatically people will vote according to their ethnicity. This, I think, this is something that we have to educate the people about. That so far, very unscrupulous politicians to canvass support have relied on canvassing the ethnic group to get votes. So you have to. So there's a matter of education in such a way that the people choose programs, but instead of choosing individuals. That's what I think. That's where the problem lies, and that's
Mr.
unfortunately that's what the present system uses, and the RPF. That if you got into elections automatically, people would vote according to their ethnicity. It's not automatic, and that's what we have to do. That is
Yeah, I think that Mr. Bahunga, without
Yes.
even more extrapolated, you just nailed it. You just nailed it. It's about educating people on how democracy works, which
Yes.
means competing good ideas, competition with good policies.
Yes,
Now,
correct.
I'm going to jump to my my expert, Mr. Sengi Yumba. Mr. Sengi Yumba, we just try to touch on this kind of maintaining an enormous army, which we tend to see in Rwanda, and you even want to mention that, and we tended to stop you because we knew we're gonna come to this issue. So, what is your analysis on this topic, Mr. Sengi?
Before he answers, can I add one more comment as well? Mrs. Sengiumba,
Sure.
when I speak with a lot of young Rwandans in Rwanda my age,
Yes.
I notice almost two different worlds. A world where everyone has no choice but to be part of the military, in the army, and a world where some do have a choice. And so the ones who you have a choice, I often tell them that you're in a military or a mercenary system, and they have very hard time accepting that. How do you believe this mercenary system is also affecting the human resources and investment of building the country itself? Thanks.
The mercenaries we have in Rwanda, to train them, it costs national resources. These are resources which could have been invested in more productive areas. But I wanted to speak to this issue of ethnic voting, and I want to highlight that in Senegal, they elected Senghor, who comes from a very tiny minority of population of Senegal, the minority of the Serer. Again, also in Tanzania, Julius Nyerere comes from a minority group, but he was, as you know, he was elected, and he even relinquished power to allow peaceful transfer of power among politicians. Now, addressing the issue of the army of Rwanda, Rwanda has an overwhelming. Our army goes far beyond security needs of the Republic of Rwanda. The security needs of Rwanda can be entrusted to a policy of good neighborliness with our neighbors. Good neighborliness, fraternity. We are surrounded by countries and populations with which we share bonds of blood, history, geography. We don't need to frighten them, and they, as you know, they actually do not frighten us. So having such a huge army is nonsensical. It does not make sense for a country like Rwanda. It would
Oh, Mr. Sengiyumva.
Jean-Jacques,
No. I wish you could focus on the Rwandans' means to sustain that army, because about neighboring invasion will be for Mr. Bakunda Ikicharo.
Okay. I just wanted to highlight that the resources which we invest in training such a huge army could be better invested in education to develop human resources. As you know, there are countries which are as poor as we are. A country like Bangladesh, they have developed human resources and they contribute to the development of all their neighbors. Bangladesh is also a major contributor of the United Nations peacekeeping, whereas Rwanda now is using the surplus of its troops to sustain operations which can be rightly regarded as mercenary or soldiers for hire. This is shameful. And for hire by who? This is an army which is serving the benefit, the interest of not Rwandans, but for. But if you want to give the floor to my brother.
Yeah. Oh, no. Thank you. That's what we just want, because we are trying to see if really Rwanda can be a viable country, means able to function by considering all its citizens, meaning there are a couple of challenges Rwanda is facing, so that it's more likely to not be possible. So now, if we talk about surviving, a country that survives by invading neighboring countries, how can that country be sustainable, Mr. Or Professor Bakunda Ikicharo?
Okay. First of all, I have to go to the roots causes of the invasion of Rwanda from Uganda. So this was planned before. That means the planners wanted to invade Rwanda first and then continue to, Zaire, at that time.
Mr. Bakunda Ikicharo, who were those planners? Like, who were they?
We call them invisible hands, my friend.
Oh, meaning the ghosts?
Invisible hands are those Westerners country, those people who were, first of all, in Africa to take our people for slavery. They went again for, colonization. And then now they are using their neo-imperialism to dominate and to exploit, Africa. When it comes to DRC with its natural resources, so they plan to send one group which will be, accepting their will, so that they can continue and exploit, loot, Congolese natural resources. So they went to Kigali, to Rwanda in general, where they even planned what they did, so that they can take Rwanda is a kind of bridge to take away the natural resources of DRC. Okay, so now what I'm saying is that those planners are, actors. They are actors, but they can train you, they can train everyone and give him or her a mission to perform what they want.
So let's be specific. If they train who and what. So are you referring to Rwanda, to train Rwanda, or what? Be specific a little bit, if you can.
Oh, let me tell you that the current president of Rwanda was